Welcome to this video by SH Millinery. In this video I'm going to show you how to block a hat on an ordinary household dinner plate. This is not a couture hat, but this will help you get a feel for making hats and also using household items. Ideal if you just want to make yourself a hat for a special occasion. Of course we need dinner plate. Ideally you need two the same size. The first one we're going to use to block the hat on. Now because we need some sort of raised centre, I've used a block of wood here, but a small saucer sellotaped to the top of the plate will work just as well. Cover this all with cling film so that your fabric won't stick. The second plate we're going to use to block our millinery petersham on for the edge of the hat. So you can leave that as is. It won't need any covering. First of all, we're going to cut out our first shape in buckram, millinery buckram, which is a very heavily stiffened woven cotton fabric. You need to cut a shape about 1 inch wider than your plate. So cut a wide circle. It only has to be rough, doesn't have to be exact, as long as you have enough to turn over. Once you've cut the buckram out, we're now going to cut our fabric. I've got some pretty polycotton here. Decide whereabouts you're going to have your pattern on the hat. With this, it has some large flowers, so I'm looking for the best spot for the outside of the hat so I've got a good pattern. So I'm going to use this corner here, and I need to cut 2 circles, one for the lining of the hat and one for the top of the hat. And again, I'm using the buckram as my pattern. So cut round again. Again, it doesn't have to be exact, just rough circles that will cover your plate. You can use most fabrics for this. If you're using a heavyweight fabric, you might need to add some stiffening to the fabric itself. You will also need a piece of millinery petersham and about 1 inch width to go all the way around the plate, and it will have to be millinery petersham, not nylon or polyester. You'll also need a headband for inside of the hat. Once you've got your circles cut out, we're now going to dampen them. I'm putting them on a tray and spraying them with clean water. You need to spray quite a bit so that all the pieces are quite damp. The buckram, once it gets wet, will stretch and be able to be pulled over the hat. Then get your block, place the first piece of fabric right side down onto the plate. Then pull your buckram and stretch it so that it'll stretch into shape over the plate. Then your next piece of fabric is right side up. So we've got our nice top, then we have the buckram, and then we have the lining. These are going to be stretched over the edges of the plate, and to keep in place I'm using wonder clips. Now you could use bulldog clips, pegs, all sorts of things just to clip to the edge of the plate. But as you go around clipping, do the north, south, east and west first, stretching and pulling the buckram and the 2 pieces of fabric at the same time. So pull and stretch so that you have a nice taut finish over the plate. Once you've got those in place, go around the edges, again pulling, stretching, and make sure you have no pleats in position. Keep going all the way around, and so that it's all clipped into place very nicely. I use wonder clips a lot in my work. Very useful tools. Especially when using household objects that you can't pin into. Once you've got it all stretched and clipped all the way around, and you feel it's nice and tight and there are no wrinkles and creases, you'll set this aside to dry at least overnight. Put to one side and let dry naturally. Now we're going to move to the other plate that we had and our piece of millinery Petersham, which again you're going to spray with water and dampen. Millinery Petersham is usually a mix of something like rayon and cotton, and it will stretch and curve and do lots of nice things for millinery, whereas polyester won't. So wet the Petersham as much as possible. Get your second dinner plate. And then we're going to fold it over the edges, pull and stretch as we go. So start off by clipping it down again with a wonder clip. Then pull and stretch as you go so that you get a lovely curve with no ruffles, crinkles, folds. Also check that you've got the same amount either side of the edge of the plate. Keep pulling and stretching all the way around. If you don't stretch it, you won't get a good curve. And again, once it's all clipped in place, it's put aside overnight to dry. Right, our hat is now dry, and I'm checking to see how smooth it is. Take all your wonder clips off, and we're going to remove it from the plate. This is where if you've forgotten to put saran wrap or cling film on your plate, you might struggle a bit. So ease the edges up and then pull away from the plate. Once it's off the plate, we're going to have to trim the edge. You've got a nice crisp edge where it was folded over the plate. Follow around this with your scissors, trimming neatly. Now we want the hat to keep its shape and to have some stiffening. So around the edge, we are going to put some brim reed. Now this is a form of nylon plastic wire that's used in millinery. But if you haven't got brim reed, you can use some lightweight garden wire. Any lightweight wire would do. So what I'm doing is again clipping round with the wonder clips to keep the brim reed in place because it's very springy. Leave a slight overlap. Now I'm going to sew this with the sewing machine using a large zigzag stitch. So over the brim reed all the way around the hat so that you have a nice firm edge that'll keep everything in place. Now we're going to take off the millinery petersham that was on our plate, and as you can see it's dried in a lovely circle. We're now going to put this over the top of the brim reed and the edge of the hat, and again use clips to clip in place. Check all the time that you have exactly the same amount either side of the brim. The wonder clips come in handy for this. They'll give you a visual guide. Pull it and stretch it around the hat over the rough edges. And again, we're going to sew this on the machine. If it was a couture hat, we would be doing this by hand. Using a straight stitch, quite a large stitch, I'm sewing all the way around, making sure that both edges are caught in. When you get to the end, fold over the edge carefully and stitch in place. As you finish stitching, put the hat back onto the plate so that you can use a cloth and a steam iron to press any wrinkles and make it all look lovely. Once you've pressed the hat, we're going to attach the headband. We need to sew the headband about a third of the way along the headband to the centre of the hat, about here. I'm using extra strong thread for this. Try and stitch through the fabric on the headband and then through the hat. You only need to do 1 or 2 small stitches just to keep it in place while we affix it further. Now what we're going to do is take a rectangle of the fabric, which I've folded over on all edges, and I'm going to glue this to the centre of the hat over the stitching. Normally I would stitch the whole thing, but again, this isn't a couture hat, this is just to show you. So I'm using hot glue for this. This will keep the headband firmly in place and stop it wobbling about on the head. So glue it down and press again firmly. Once you've got the hat to your liking and you're happy with the headband placement, it now comes time to decorate. Now here I've cut out lots of odd-shaped circles, all different sizes, from the spare fabric, and they've all been stiffened with a PVA solution. I've used 1 part PVA to 3 parts of water, and I've painted over the fabric. Now I take each circle, fold it in half again, and stitch. And I'm going to join 3 circles together to make a sort of floral ruffle, is the only way I can describe it. But of course you can add whatever you like to the top of the hat. If you want to add fake flowers or feathers or a big bow, it's up to you entirely. This is what I decided on when I started this project. So I'm stitching 3 together. It is quite hard to stitch because of course you're stitching through stiffened fabric. So stitch them together and then make as many as you wish for the top of your hat. Depending on the size of your circles, you'll probably need at least 5. And you can see here, once they've all stitched together, they make a nice sort of ruffly rose. And I've also cut them out with pinking shears to add a little bit of interest. So I've cut my flowers out and stitched them together. And I'm also cutting some little strips of very soft black net, tying a knot in the middle, and I'm going to use those also for the decoration, just to add some interest and a little bit of contrast. The easiest way to decide where everything is going to go is to place the hat on your lap so that you have it in flat front of you, and then pop your flowers down, decide where they're going to go, and stitch everything to the hat. Once it's all stitched, it will look like this. As I say, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and you can do this a lot with cinnamon, fabric, buckram, whatever you like. And you can find me on Etsy, Instagram and on Facebook, all under the name SH Millinery. Thanks for watching, and I hope you subscribe.